Chapter 14. Chains of Choice. Royce shifts, his body screaming in protest. The ropes bite into his wrist, raw flesh burning with every movement. His shoulders throb from the endless strain of holding himself upright. He tilts his head back, drawing in a ragged breath as the moon breaks through the thin veil of clouds above, cold, distant, and unfeeling. When his gaze lowers again and locks with the man across from him, "I accept," Royce mutters, voice firm. Get her out of here safely." His eyes flare with a quiet fire, an unspoken warning that if Octavia comes to harm, the man will bear the weight of Royce's wrath in this life or the next. The man doesn't flinch. He meets Royce's stare with one of his own, equally fierce, driven by his own desperate vow to his sister. He steps closer, retrieving a water skin from his pouch. Holding it aloft, he tips it carefully towards Royce's lips. Royce leans his head back, swallowing the bitter water, tinged with the taste of blood. "Your woman," the man begins, his voice low and uncertain. "She will not trust me. She will not forgive me when she learns I am leaving you behind. What do you want me to tell her?" Royce swallows hard, then answers through his cracked lips. "Tell her this. When times are dire, when despair clouds judgment, we cannot let emotion rule us. She must go to Helga and Thorin after she shows you the wreckage." The man studies him for a long moment, searching his face for any sign of hesitation. "And you think those words will convince her?" Royce nods slowly. "I don't think. I know." The man sets the waterskin aside and grips Royce's shoulder firmly. "Then hear me, Royce. I will not harm her. I will see her safely to the wreckage. You have my word." Despite the pain racking his body, a dry chuckle escapes Royce. "No, brother. You misunderstood. She will see you safely to the wreckage." For the first time, a faint smile touches the man's lips. But the moment is short-lived. From somewhere in the tree line beyond, the sound of movement breaks the silence. Branches snapping, faint voices drifting on the wind. The man glances over his shoulder, then back to Royce, his expression hardening. "Very well. My name is Yuri. May our paths cross again, in this life or the next." He unsheathes his dagger, lowering himself to a crouch as he draws a stone across the blade in slow, deliberate strokes, the rasp of steel filling the air. Shadowed figures slip from the tree line, torchlight catching on their faces as the returning party filters back into camp. Men mutter quietly as they vanish into their tents, weary from the night's journey. Their leader lingers, his pace deliberate, his gaze sharp, fixed on Royce. He circles once, assessing, before turning his attention to Yuri. "Any problems with him?" Yuri calmly slides his dagger back into its sheath. "Not at all, sir. Not a peep." The leader extends a hand, hauling Yuri upright, then claps him on the shoulder. "Good. You may start your second watch." He nods, dismissing him. Yuri glances at Royce, the barest flicker of acknowledgement passing between them, before striding away toward the pit where Octavia awaits. Royce tracks him until the shadows swallow him whole, then drops his eyes to the dirt. The leader lingers. His boots crunch softly as he paces in front of Royce, studying him with a predator's patience. "Most who refuse to cooperate," his voice is measured, almost casual, "are put down." He pauses, as if weighing Royce's worth like livestock at market. Royce doesn't raise his head. He braces himself for the inevitable. "But," the leader continues, stopping just in front of him, "there are other uses for able-bodied warriors." A long stretch of silence ensues. The night air grows heavy. Finally, the leader leans in close. I've struck a bargain with a local farmstead. Tomorrow, You'll be their property. Your life spared. The words hit like a hammer. Royce keeps his gaze on the ground, jaw clenched, the taste of dirt and blood thick in his mouth. His pride smolders, but beneath the fury is a cold, hollow weight. Slavery is survival, but not life. After a beat, Royce forces words through his cracked lips. And what of Octavia? A thin smile curls across the man's face. He doesn't answer. Instead, he gestures to one of his men. The soldier takes the vacant spot where Yuri had been. The leader turns and vanishes into his hut without another word. Royce is left with only silence and the steady pull of the ropes cutting into his skin. He drifts in and out of half-conscious state, fighting to remain alert. Each rustle of wind, each snapping twig, he listens for, hoping, daring, to hear Octavia's escape. Deep down, he clings to a flicker of impossible hope, that she might convince Yuri to return for him. But reason gnaws at him. He knows it would mean the death for them all. The moon sinks low. Dawn paints the horizon in pale streaks of red and gold. Exhaustion drags Royce under, until a sudden shout rips through the camp. Yuri and the prisoners are gone! The camp erupts into chaos. Men scramble from their tents, grabbing weapons, barking orders. The leader bursts from his hut, his face carved in fury. After a hushed exchange with the frantic scout, he storms toward Royce. Without hesitation, his fist crashes against Royce's jaw. The taste of iron fills his mouth as the leader spits on him with warm venom. You're lucky I've already sold you, you miserable hide. He snarls. He turns sharply, barking orders. You three, take this scum to Halden. The rest, with me. Rough hands seize Royce, yanking him upright before they untie him from the pillars. As they drag him away, he spits blood into the dirt. The world around him spinning. His body is broken, his future shackled, but in his chest, the ember of hope still smolders. Octavia is free. The men haul Royce across uneven ground, his feet dragging, his bound wrists tearing raw. Every step jostles the bruises across his ribs. Every tug of the rope reminds him of how little control he has left. He stumbles half-conscious, his vision swimming in and out of darkness. The march is long. The forest thins into rolling fields washed in dull gray of dawn. Smoke rises on the horizon, fat plumes drifting lazily from chimneys. The smell of livestock and tilled earth hangs in the air. They reach the farmstead by mid-morning, a cluster of rough wooden buildings, a barn, and a flock of goats. It is quiet, almost too quiet. The men shove Royce forward until he collapses to his knees in the dirt. Wrong song. From the farmhouse emerges a man accompanied by a few armed guards. Broad-shouldered, thick, with muscle gone soft with years of eating better than his laborers. His beard is streaked with gray, his eyes calculating. He carries himself not like a warrior, but a man used to getting what he pays for. So this is the one, Halden rumbles, squinting down at Royce. He circles slowly as though inspecting a horse. Royce lifts his head, his glare defying, even through the haze of exhaustion. One of the captors speaks. I need to turn this down. Stand by. Strong and capable. You'll get your use out of him. Halden grunts, unimpressed but not displeased. He kneels, gripping Royce's chin in one calloused hand, forcing his face upward. Royce resists, jaw clenching. Good eyes, Halfton mutters, hating them. That'll burn out quick enough. He stands, reaching into his pouch at his belt and tossing a leather sack heavy with coin to the men. Fair trade. The captors waste no time. They turn and vanish back down the path, leaving Royce and Holden shadow. Holden gestures, and two farmhands, big, blanked-eye men with arms like fence posts, drag Royce toward the barn. Inside, the air is thick with the stench of hay, manure, and sweat. Chains hang from beams, iron cuffs ready. Royce's heart hammers as they lash him to the wall. Holden steps in close, lowering his voice so only Royce can hear him. You'll work. You'll eat. You'll bleed if I tell you to. Try to run. He gestured toward the armed men behind him. And I'll feed the dogs your legs. Royce meets his gaze, refusing to look away. Kill me now. It'll be less work for you. Holden chuckles darkly. No, boy. Death's too quick. You'll live. You'll break. And then, he smirks, you'll serve. The farmhands finish shackling Royce, the chains biting into his already cut wrist and ankles. Holden gives him a satisfied nod and turns for the barn doors. Let him stew. Tomorrow he earns his keep. The heavy doors slam shut, plunging Royce into half-darkness. His body screams for rest, but his mind claws desperately for focus. He doesn't know if Octavia is safe, if Yuri kept his word. He only knows if he survives long enough that he will find her again. And if he breaks, it won't be for Holden's profit. It will be for his own revenge. Royce spends the rest of the day chained in the barn, his body slumping against the rough wooden post. His wrist and ankles throb from the iron cuffs, every shift of movement scraping skin. Through the cracks in the barn walls, he watches the sun crawl across the sky. The farm bustles outside, voices of workers and guards, the sounds of cattle, the rhythmic thud of axes splitting wood. But inside, it is silence broken only by the rustle of mice in the straw. A farmhand brings him a bowl of thin gruel by nightfall, sliding it across the floor like he's feeding an animal. Royce forces it down, though every swallow tastes of ash and humiliation. When the farm settles into quiet and the torches are put out, Royce lies awake in the darkness, his chains rattling slowly whenever he stirs. His mind drifts to Octavia, whether she escaped, whether she's even alive. For a time, he imagines her voice beside him, steadying him like she always has. But then the vision fades, replaced by the cold truth. Tomorrow, he will belong to Haldon. Exhaustion finally drags him into restless sleep, haunted by dreams of Octavia's fading silhouette and the weight of the chains he cannot break. The clang of iron on wood jolts Royce awake. A farmhand stands over him with a ring of keys. The early dawn spilling into the barn through the open doors. The man's face is rough, expression empty, as he unlocks the cuff at Royce's ankles and hands. The relief is short-lived. The weight of new shackles is fastened around his wrist, connected by a length of chain. On your feet, the farmhand mutters. Royce forces his aching body upright, every muscle screaming from the beatings and restless night. His mouth is dry, lips cracked, but he doesn't speak. He is led out into the chill of the morning air, where the farm comes alive with the first sounds of labor. Men shouting to one another, the sharp crack of a whip on wood. Holden waits near a fence. A heavy-set man with gray in his beard and a presence that weighs heavier than his bulk. His eyes narrow when Royce approaches. This one's supposed to be strong, Holden says, as if Royce isn't standing right in front of him. We'll find out quick if he's worth the coin. He gestures to the fields where rows of earth stretch out beneath the rising sun. Tools lie ready. Hoes, spades, baskets. Cotton haul, Holden orders. Stone, timber, earth. Whatever I tell you. You work, you eat, and if you falter, he taps the whips coiled at his belt. You bleed. Royce meets his gaze briefly, then lowers it, hiding the fire burning in his eyes. He knows what Holden wants, to break him, grind him into another beast of burden. But as the farmhands shove a hoe into his chained hands and push him toward the soil, Royce grips it tighter than they expect. The day grinds on in brutal rhythm. His back bends beneath the weight of the rocks he carries from the field. His hands blister against the wooden handle of the hoe, splint skitting blood mixing with the sweat and dirt. He is denied water until the sun is high, and even then it's given sparingly. By midday, his vision falters, but he forces his legs to keep moving, one step after another. Every strike of the hoe, every stone dragged, he thinks of Octavia. He imagines her alive, free, running through the woods away from this place. That thought alone fuels him where his body should have failed. As death settles, Royce is finally chained again to the barn, tossed a crust of bread and half-empty water skin. His body trembles from exhaustion as he quickly is consumed by sleep. The second morning comes harsher than the first. Royce wakes stiff and sore, the ache in his back a deep knot that no sleep could ease. His hands are raw, fingers swollen, blisters burst and crusted with dirt. When the farmhand shoves him to his feet and snaps the chain free, Royce almost stumbles, barely catching himself before he's dragged outside. The air is heavy with fog, the fields dark and wet with dew. Other men move around already, bent silhouettes dragging plows or hauling loads. No words are spoken, only the groan of wood, the grunt of men, the occasional crack of Holden's whip. Royce is handed a yoke this time, its splintered wood pressing across his shoulders. His task is to carry cut logs from the edge of the forest to the farmyard. At first, he finds rhythm, slow, steady, step by step. His legs burn, but he grits his teeth, picturing Octavia's face each time he wants to stop. But the slope of the hill betrays him. His foot catches a root half hidden in the mud, and though he doesn't fall, 2 logs spill to the ground with a heavy thud. Silence. The other farmhands stop their work for just a moment, enough for the sound to echo. Royce straightens quickly, gripping the yoke tighter, ready to lift, but before he can, a hand grips him on his shoulder like iron. Holden. The man towers behind him, his beard damp with fog, his eyes dark and merciless. He doesn't speak at first. He simply stares at the spilled logs, then at Royce. Slowly, deliberately, he uncoils the whip from his belt. "What do we have here?" Holden's voice is low and calm. "A stumble. A slip of the foot." Royce says nothing. He knows better. Holden leans closer, the stench of sour ale on his breath. "There are no accidents here. Not on my farm. Out there, mistakes cost coin. Here, they cost blood." The crack comes fast, biting across Royce's back before he can brace. Pain sears through him, the sting cutting deeper than any blade he's faced in battle. He clenches his jaw, forcing the growl in his throat down, refusing to give Holden the satisfaction of a scream. But Holden isn't done. He lashes again, this time across Royce's side, enough to drive him to one knee. "You belong to me now," Holden says, voice rising as he grips Royce by the hair, forcing his head up. Your strength, your sweat, even your pain, it's all mine. And you will not forget it. He shoves Roy's face first into the mud, the taste of the earth filling his mouth. The men around them don't move, don't look, each one too beaten to risk sharing in the punishment. Royce pushes himself up slowly, trembling, blood seeping into the torn fabric at his side. He places the wood back onto the yoke before lifting once again. Holden watches, whip in hand, until Royce takes his first step forward again. Only then does he turn away, barking orders at others as though nothing had happened. Royce carries on, every step agony, every breath fire in his chest. But in the hollow pit of suffering, his resolve hardens. And that, my friends, brings us to our first poll. Oh, sorry, fucked it up. First poll of the night. Time to vote. Vote, 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 vote. I'm going to pee and grab more ale. Vote, 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 vote. Verb. Also, what's going on, Meg? So that's Boosa. How's it going, Boosa? Over the top. Hippie. Hope you guys are all doing well. Give me 1 second. What's it looking like? What's it looking like? We got a 7-3 vote. I hope. Are you voting? Would you rather have him try to escape or keep a low profile? You can say your vote in chat and I will count it. Well, OP1, your vote would not matter. That being said, we have lots of people voting. Lots of people voting, which is awesome, guys. I very much appreciate that. Very much appreciate that. That makes the story even better. Try to escape. The sun barely peeks over the horizon as Royce and others drag sacks of grain across the muddy field. The air is damp, thick with the smell of manure and wet earth. Every few steps, the ropes chafe against Royce's wrist. A constant reminder of the position he is in. Around him, a few of the men he's had minimal conversation with, fellow captives, bruised and weary, glance at one another, silent agreements passing in their eyes. Tonight, Royce whispers under his breath, as Holden's guards count heads at the edge of the field. We move tonight. The plan is crude but simple. During the midday break, when the guards shift positions, to slip into the thicket at the north edge of the farm and run for the tree line. Royce feels a flicker of hope, a dangerous spark that nearly makes him forget the bruises, scars, and hunger. Evening arrives, cold and grey. The guards are distracted by a delivery of firewood. This is our moment. Royce signals, and the others scatter. For a brief, shining moment, it works. They duck behind the stacks of hay, weaving through the shadows and into the thicket, hearts pounding. Then a shout pierces the air. Royce freezes eyes wide. A guard's torch swings toward the shadows. Run! Royce yells. Branches claw at their skin, mud soaks their clothes, their constraints slowing their movements. A guard emerges from within the trees, sword drawn. Royce collides with him, but his strength is spent, his movements clumsy. The guard's fists land hard against his ribs, knocking the wind out of him. The others fare no better. Screams of the clash fill the clearing. One by one, they are tackled, beaten, dragged back. Royce fights until his muscles give out, until a blow to the back of the head sends him sprawling face first into the mud. By the time the guards have corralled the remaining men, Royce lies there, gasping, the taste of blood and dirt in his mouth, watching as Halden steps from the shadows. Bravo! Halden's voice is calm, almost amused as he claps his hand. Admirable, really, yet very foolish. Halden points to two of the weakest captives. Without hesitation, the guards take action, driving their swords through the two men's chest with ease. They fall to the ground in a lifeless heap. Halden stares at the two motionless bodies on the ground. The wolves feast tonight. And for the rest of you, let this be a lesson. The ropes are yanked tight around Royce's wrist once again. He struggles, but it's useless. The remaining escapees groan in the mud beside him, bruised and bleeding. Royce's chest aches from the blows, but more than anything, a cold realization settles in. Halden's control is absolute, and the farm is no place for heroes, only survivors. As the sun sets, Royce and the others are marched back to the barn, Halden's laughter echoing behind them, the taste of defeat bitter on their tongues. The days begin to bleed together. Morning bell, the crack of Halden's whip, the endless labor beneath a brutal sun. Royce's hands, once strong enough to wield the sword for hours, are swollen, blistered, and split. The skin peels back until raw flesh beneath screams with every grip of the plow handle, every pull of a cart. At first, he bears it with defiance. He stands tall even when beaten, meets Halden's eye when cursed, clenches his jaw and swallows pain without sound. Each insult, each lash is a challenge he endures, a quiet rebellion against the breaking. But Halden knows how to chip away at men like Royce. The lashings grow precise, not enough to kill, not enough to disable, just enough to remind him, hour by hour, of where he now is. When Royce stumbles, Halden forces him to kneel in the mud while the others work around him. When Royce dares lift an eye in defiance, Halden makes him crawl across the dirt for spilled grain like a dog. You were a warrior once, Halden sneers one evening, kicking Royce in the chest until he rolls onto his back. But now, you're nothing more than a bitch. The words burn deeper than the whip. Days turn into weeks. Royce's body thins, his muscles burned away by hunger and exhaustion. The fire in his chest dims as he wakes each morning, not with defiance, but with dread. The The ropes leave his wrists raw and weeping, his back striped with scars, no longer heals between lashes. Worst of all are the whispers Halden plants. She's gone, you know. The woman, Octavia. He says it casually. You'll never see her again. Sometimes Roy snarls back. Other times he stays silent. But each time, the seed of doubt digs deeper. Sleep brings no refuge. The other slaves lie silent at night, broken men who no longer speak of freedom. Royce tries to spark conversation, to whisper of escape, but after their first attempt, their empty stares silence him. He is alone. The moment he knows he is breaking comes not with the lash, but with something far quieter. One morning, as fog clings to the fields, Halden orders Royce to the mud to wash the hooves of the oxen. Royce hesitates, just long enough to remember what he is, what he was. His chest swells with the urge to refuse, to spit in Halden's face and take the beating that will follow. But his knees bend. His hands, cracked and bleeding, reach for the beast hoof. His voice never rises. And in that silence, as the ox shifts and he works the mud from its hoof like a servant, Royce feels something in him fracture, a quiet surrender. The pride that carries him through pain and defiance slips away, almost unnoticed. The weeks wear on, each one grinding him flatter and duller. He no longer counts days. He no longer fights the ropes when they bind him at night. His shoulders stoop. His eyes drop when Halden's barks. The warrior is still there, somewhere, buried deep beneath exhaustion, humiliation, and despair. But for now, Royce is broken. A tool. A body. A slave. The air grows colder with each dawn, mist clinging heavier to the fields, frost biting at the edges of the grass. The endless green turns brittle and brown, and the farm shifts into a new rhythm. Cutting, storing, stockpiling for the long winter ahead. Royce feels it in his bones. His body, already worn, stiffens in the cold. The mornings are brutal. Ropes freezing stiff against his wrist, fingers so numb he can barely hold the plow or lift the sacks of grain. Halden notices, of course. He always notices. Move, dog! Halden snarls one morning, striking Royce across the shoulder with the flat end of his staff. Royce stumbles forward, hoisting a bale twice his weight of his weakened frame. The rope cuts into his chest as he staggers beneath the load, but he doesn't protest. Not anymore. The work changes with the season. Fences are melded, cellars filled, firewood stacked high in towering piles. Royce is forced to haul logs until his arms shake uncomfortably, each splinter cutting into his hands until they look less like a warrior's and more like the hands of a beggar. His back screams with every movement, but he bows his head and continues, always continues. The other slaves shuffle through the motions beside him. They are husk, quiet shadows that no longer speak of anything but the next chore, the next meal. Royce mirrors them now, although somewhere inside he still clings quietly, faintly, to the ghost of Octavia. He pictures her face when the nights grow long, when his body shakes with cold in the hay-strewn barn. But even that image begins to fray around the edges, fading with time. One evening, as the last night of the day bleeds out of the trees, Royce and the others are ordered to the yard. The wind cuts sharp, carrying the smell of smoke of burning leaves. Halden stands before them, cloak heavy on his shoulders, a mug of ale in his hand. Winter comes quick, he says, his voice booming across the yard. And I will not suffer weakness in my camp. If any man falls behind, if any man grows sick or lazy, he will not eat. And if he becomes useless, he smirks, letting the silence hang before finishing. He will not live. The words hang heavier than the frost. Royce stares at the ground, jaw tight. He knows what Halden is doing, creating fear, stoking desperation. And it works. The men around him nod, shuffle, and accept. As does he. The nights grow longer, the food thinner, the cold sharper. Royce lies awake, shivering in the dark, haze scratching his skin, his stomach aching with hunger. Each morning he rises slower, feels his body falter sooner. And each morning Halden's eye finds him, measuring and watching. By mid-fall, Royce is no longer just enduring. He is only surviving. Nothing more. The axes rise and fall in rhythm, dull thuds echoing across the brisk autumn air. Breath steams from weary mouths, mingling with the sharp scent of split pine. Royce's arms burn, but his body is moving in instinct. When a horn suddenly splits the morning. The note is long, commanding, and alien to the daily grind of labor. He halts mid-swing, axe suspended, eyes scanning the horizon. Around him, the guards jolt as if struck awake, their discipline fraying in surprise before snapping back into order. Barked commands drive Royce and the other slaves inward, herded like livestock to the center of the farm. Rough hands shove him into a line, iron restraints clinching tighter, cold and unyielding against bruised skin. From the farmhouse, Halden emerges. His heavy boots bite into the frost-hardened ground as his gaze fixes on the horizon. Royce follows his eyes. A column approaches, banners snapping in the cold wind, a carriage rolling at its heart like dark jewel guarded by steel. Veterans march alongside, their bearing unmistakable. Hard men, honed by wars, every motion precise, every glance alive with discipline. Halden's face knots into a scowl. His voice cuts through the air. Whatever this is, you will remain silent and stay in line. Guards tighten their grips on the captives, forcing submission, suppressing any chance of rebellion. The brigade halts in the farmyard, and something shifts in Halden. The tyrant's mask slips, if only for a breath, revealing unease beneath the iron exterior. The carriage door swings wide. Two armed men step forward, steadying the woman who descends. Adorned, yet unpretentious, she moves with a presence that bends the space around her. Even before she speaks, she commands it. Torvi. Halden greets her with a shallow bow, his smile practiced but hollow. What a pleasant surprise. To what do I owe this honor? Her eyes slice through him, unfooled. A subtle motion of her hand sends the guards fanning outward, forming a perfect perimeter. Halden's own men instinctively give ground, uneasy in the shadow of such discipline. Torvi advances a few paces, her voice carrying over the hushed yard. Winter delays the storm with Korsvik, but with it, it does not stay. We have only months to prepare. My father has ordered for all reserves, for each Jarl's pledge of men to report for training. Her gaze sweeps the line of laborers, and for the briefest moment, her eyes meet Royce's. A cold tremor runs through him. In that fleeting second, he feels weighed, measured, and perhaps remembered. She turns back to Holden, her bearing ironclad, leaving the farmstead suspended in breathless silence. Holden's jaws clenches, the usual steel in his expression flickering with doubt. He squares his shoulders, forcing authority into his posture, but his voice betrays him. I don't mean to sound defiant, he says, carefully and cautious. But winters are brutal, and I run a large estate. I need every man I could spare. His words hang in the cold air, thin and uncertain, like a thread stretched too tight. Torvi steps closer, her presence filling the space between them. The soldiers at her flanks shift subtly, mirroring her confidence. Her eyes sharpen, irritation cutting into her face. You swore an oath to my father, King Axel, she declares. She raises a finger, stabbing the air toward Holden, as if nailing him in place. To provide men, when and if he called for them. Surely, you would not dare break that oath. The weight of her words crushes his defiance. Holden's posture falters, his voice small in comparison to hers. Of course not, my lady, he mutters, shrinking beneath her gaze. Torvi lowers her head, satisfaction curling into a faint smile. She turns toward the line of laborers, her eyes sweeping over them with deliberate calm. If you wish to keep as many soldiers as possible, she says smoothly, her tone laced with reason, perhaps a few of your slaves will take their place. The words strike like a hammering blow. Holden jolts forward, desperation flaring in his movements. Her guards step into motion instantly, steel flashing as they form a living wall. He halts, caught between the fury and the realization of his own helplessness. I paid good money for them, he snaps. You cannot. Royce's breath catches. The exchange sparks a frenzy of thoughts inside him, sharper than anything he's felt in a long while. The chance for freedom, for purpose, glimmers at the edge of possibility. The world war rattles in his chest, its weight heavy and dangerous. To march beneath the enemy's banner, to take up arms against Kolsvik. Yet, compared to the life he endures under Holden, it feels like a choice, a chance. For the first time since his capture, Royce feels the heat of possibility in his blood. However slim, however dangerous, there might be a way out. And with that, we come to our next option. Next vote! Next vote! Next vote! What's going on, trucker? I miss these. You got banned for talking shit to Action Man. That sucks, brother. That sucks. Did you appeal it at all or what? Actually, hold on. We'll talk about this. We're almost done with the chapter. We'll talk about it after. Another very big choice you guys have to make. A very big choice. Another big choice. What are we? It's a 10-2 vote right now. 10-2. What's going on, Bland? Sorry, brother. I didn't even see you. 11-2. 12-2. We got a lot of fucking people voting tonight. You almost got fucking 20 people voting. Looks like Step Forward is running. running with the vote here. Running with the vote as we come into our final seconds here. We're gonna need a miracle. An absolute miracle. Step forward wins. The words hang in the air like a challenge. Royce's chest heaves, his pulse hammering in his ears. Then, before the weight of his hesitation can crush him, he takes a single step forward. The movement echoes louder than a shout. Chains jingle at his wrist, his broad shoulders raising as he straightens to his full height. I will go, Royce says, his voice steady. The line of slaves stir as the Torvi's eyes fix on Royce. A murmur ripples through them, and emboldened by his defiance, a few others step forward as well. Halden explodes at once, his face twisting red. Back in line, all of you! He snarls, split flying everywhere. His fists clench at his sides as he wheels toward Octavia. You can't do this! They are mine! Paid for in silver and sweat! They belong to me! Torvi doesn't flinch. Amusement flickers across her face, subtle but sharp, as though watching a child throw a tantrum. She tilts her head, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. Belong? She echoes softly, her voice smooth as a knife sliding free of its sheath. No man belongs to another, Halden. They belong to the crown, to my father. Her words cut deeper than any blade, and Halden's protests die in his throat. His jaw trembles, his anger restrained only by fear. Roy stands firm, his stare locked on forward. For the first time in months, he feels like he is standing on the edge of choice rather than submission. Torvi lets the silence stretch, relishing Halden's humiliation. Then she steps closer to Royce, her presence sharp and disarming. Her eyes, ice blue, piercing, search him. Long strands of blonde hair catch the breeze, framing her face young, poised, and unshakably adamant. For an instant, Royce falters, struck by her beauty, by the strength radiating from her gaze. She studies him up and down, then pivots back to Halden. Very well, she says, her tone final. I will take 9 soldiers. She pauses, raises her hand, and points to Royce. And that man. A small leather sack arcs through the air, landing at Halden's feet with a dull thud. There is your compensation. My father will be pleased to hear you kept your oath. Her cloak whips lightly as she turns back toward the carriage. Free him, she orders. Put them in formation. Choose the 9 soldiers. We march soon. Halden's guards hesitate for a moment before obeying, rough hands seizing Royce's arms. Shackles grind and scrape as they unfasten, the weight falling away from his wrist for the first time in months. His skin burns where the iron had beat into him, the ghost of chains still heavy on his flesh. Royce flexes his hand, the blood rushing back like fire. For a moment, he nearly forgets to breathe, staring down at his raw wrist, at the freedom that feels too fragile to grasp. Then a guard shoves him forward. He stumbles into line with the soldiers, the armor clinking into sharp contrast to his ragged clothes on his back. The air around them hums with discipline, with purpose, and Royce feels the eyes of both Halden and Torvi on him. One burning with hatred, the other measuring him like a weapon newly drawn. Halden scoops up the sack of silver without the word, his jaw clenched so tightly it looks like it's ready to crack. Royce meets his gaze, and in it he sees pure venom, the silent promise that this is not the end. Torvi, by contrast, turns away with no sign of doubt. To her, the matter is already closed. Royce draws in a slow breath, steadying himself. The chains are gone, yet the path ahead feels no less daunting. He knows not whether he has leapt towards salvation or into another kind of prison. But for the first time in a few months, he has stepped by choice. Scene! Chapter 14 comes to an end.